Well, welcome back to the Foundation. This is Swaytoven. I got a cool thing to show you guys. That's if you want to actually be able to think outside the box and break the limits of music, especially when it comes to using VSTs, free VSTs and paid VSTs. There's limits that both of them have. Now, in this example, I'm going to be using Keys on Classic. In my last video, I used Omnisphere, and we've seen that there was a limitation to that, or at least something that we could fix with a tool that we actually had. But in this video, tools aren't going to work. Now, Keys on Classic is a free VST. A lot of people actually probably use it, but you can apply the same concept that I'm going to teach you to not only what I'm about to teach you, but to other things if you're able to just understand how this is about to work. Now, in the last video, I also said that we're going to be doing something with controls. This isn't quite what I had in mind, but because this still uses Fruity Peak Controller, we're going to be doing something with controls, all right? And this is a melody that I made. Let's listen to it. Now, I wanted to add a certain type of effect. I was playing with what I could do in this VST, and I realized that I could change these things, but one thing that I couldn't do was create automation clips off of any of these knobs. Here's an example. So if we were to go to the mixer, which is conveniently open right here, I could right click and I can actually create an automation clip. I could link it to a controller. I could copy value, edit events, all that stuff. Can't do that in this VST. I'm right clicking, nothing's happening. All right. Now what we did in my last video is that we figured out, well, hey, there's a way we could work around some sort of things if something like that wasn't going to work. So I go to my tools, all right, and go into my last tweaked. Nothing's actually going to work. Nothing's been tweaked last. I could tweak, here's this. Let's tweak the LFO rate. Nothing happened. But if I were to tweak the volume, guess what? The volume was tweaked. So how do we work around this problem? And that's unfortunate, is because this is exactly what I wanted to fix or do. I wanted to use the effect of the expression, which would make more of like a tremolo effect. Now, the pitch would change, like the fine tuning and the pan would change where you hear it left or right, all right? But because this was supposed to be more of like a dark melody, and this is just like the foundation of that, this is what it was supposed to sound like. So this is what the effect sounds like. All right. Now the thing is like, I think that might be a good noise to have for like the main melody in the background or something like that. That doesn't make sense if it's main in the background, but I can't automate this. I can't create an automation clip. So what can I do outside of this box to be able to fix this problem? Now, this was something to do with the LFO and the volume, all right? What the LFO is a low frequency oscillator. What that does is that sends a pulse through the noise that you're using. In this case, we're using this Keys on Classic piano sound, and it'll make it sound more wobbly, all right? The thing that we just heard. So understanding that it's the volume and the LFO rate, it just so happens that the Fruity P controller does something with that. So what I did was I put King So Classic into an instrument track, so we'll be able to use something with the volume, because that's important. What's also important is in another instrument track, but we probably didn't have to put this in another instrument track, I put Fruity P controller. All right, probably could have put it in the same one, but let's open Fruity P controller. What does that look like? Well, we have something with peak, bass, volume, tension, decay, but we have something to do with LFO, right? That's what we want to play with right now. And we have the speed, we have phase, we even have the shape of the LFO, triangle, square, saw. Now, we actually get more agency to change the LFO in this control rather than in Keys on Classic, because in Keys on Classic, this might have just mostly been using a sine. If I were to guess, that might have been like a sine LFO. That might be just default LFO, to be honest. But the thing is like, well, what if we want a triangle? Which I don't. I do want sine. I want a more of a rounded LFO. So the thing is like, we have to understand that the volume is going to have to be linked to the speed, which is what goes up and down. Is because in the Keys on Classic, it already has both elements of making the sound, having volume, all right, and then using the LFO. But if we need to use other elements outside of Keys on Classic to be able to produce this effect with more control, then we're just going to have to use the volume and the sound from Keyzone Classic and then the LFO from a different element. All right. So we're going to just have to link what we have from Keyzone Classic to the speed. All right. So of the LFO. So then we can actually create an automation clip with the LFO speed. Now let's just look at the speed as it is right now, and it's not even going to be linked to the music as we're going to like here, but like let's just look at the speed so we know that it's actually working. Notice how the knob goes down. All right, the knob goes down. That's pretty cool. But notice how nothing happened with the music. What we're going to have to do is go to the mixer. We're going to then have to finally right click the volume, because like I said, we're going to need the volume, we're going to need the sound itself, and then we're going to need to link it. But we don't create an automation clip, we link it to the controller that we just made. It's because we're using Fruity Peak controller. So let's link it to the controller, and then we go down to the automation clips of the Fruity Peak controller and use the peak control keys on LFO speed. It only says keys on LFOs because that's what I named it in the instrument track. You don't use these other ones. It'll connect it to some other ones pretty much, and it'll produce like a different type of like effect. So let's link it to the LFO speed, press accept, and let's see what happens. So we see that the volume slides adjacent parallel with the speed. It doesn't have that tremolo effect that we're looking for, but remember, this is supposed to be an LFO. Now the shape, since we made an automation clip, we're going to have to edit that automation clip. And luckily, Keyzone Classic is now linked to this automation clip control. So what we have to do is click this solid bar right here, double click it, and click this button that says LFO. Now what that does is finally create the LFO effect. Now let's listen to it. You can go to the instrument track, and there you go. But that's not what I necessarily want. I want it to be faster. Something like that. But let's listen to it, and let's listen to like the effect when it cuts off. It's a little abrupt. It doesn't sound too nice. So what we're going to have to do is do a little bit more changing things in this box. We're going to have to right click with our mouse, and what that's going to do is create another dot right here. And with that, we're going to be able to see how that warps the width of the waveform of the LFO, meaning that there's going to be the ability to fade the LFO out. So it's going to sound more natural. It's still going to sound fast, and we can change that speed, but hopefully we'll be able to hear the difference. Now, I think there was more of a difference instead of just abruptly cutting off like this. Definitely heard the cutoff right there. Even if we were to pull this in, we still might be able to get more of like a fade effect. See, like I think, at least on my end, I can hear the difference. Now, what if I wanted to have a fade in, fade out, and then a fade in? I can shift drag this right here, double click, just kidding, press escape, right click, just kidding, control Z, right click on that little tiny icon in the corner, press make unique. So now I have a second copy of this automation clip, control, whatever you want to call it. And then what I can do is I can just reverse this. So I can bring that side down, bring the other side up, and then we can have this tremolo effect where it kind of just has like a... Thing is like the speed is kind of just too fast in my opinion. I like it. All right. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we could probably do to make it more perfect. I mean, this line doesn't have to just be straight. You can add more dots to be able to like add some more curves to it. You can make it more curvy, just like that. But you know, hopefully you guys enjoyed the tutorial. You can add this effect with like the controls and other things you're trying to like, control with like just other things. It doesn't just have to be the volume. If you can just figure out how. But then again, that's why people pay for VSTs that cost hundreds of dollars, is because they make those effects for you. But if you enjoyed the information that I shared with you, please like and subscribe.